In the summer of 1968, the American magazine Life published a sensational article announcing the discovery of a Phoenician inscription in Paraíba, Brazil. Subsequently, the entire American press picked up the news, which eventually went around the earth. Therefore, it was not Columbus who discovered America, nor even the bloody Vikings, but a few daring Phoenician navigators. How they managed to reach South America remained an extraordinary enigma. The world of specialists was divided into two camps. Some were convinced of the authenticity of the fact and tried to explain how the Phoenicians crossed the Atlantic. Among them was the famous Thor Heyerdahl, who even attempted crossings of the Atlantic on papyrus rafts to demonstrate the possibility of such a journey in antiquity. Others had strong doubts. Professor Frank Moore Jr. of the University of Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA, as well as the French archaeologist H. Lehmann, set out to shed light on this dark history. They first asked Professor P.I. Cross, a scholar of the Phoenician language, to analyze the text of the inscription and translate it accurately. He, responding to the request, translated it into English, according to the facsimile provided by the National Museum of Rio de Janeiro. The text, in 8 lines, recounted the journey by water made by 12 men and 3 women for 2 years from Ezion-Geber near the Red Sea to the new continent. Professor Cross was surprised to find that the text had been written in characters borrowed from various forms of the Phoenician alphabet, used in eras located at very great distances from each other, as if the scribe had anticipated the graphic form of some unknown letters at the time when the text in question was chiseled in stone. Moreover, all the letters were perfect, and the sentences grammatically expressed, something unbelievable for the level of knowledge of a simple sailor or even a scribe. Even in his native country, such performances were only rare and only in texts of 2 or 3 lines. Therefore, a new enigma? When made public, Professor Cross's report triggered a real rush for the truth. A group of English researchers very soon demonstrated that the Phoenician American text contained biblical sentences taken from the Book of Kings, transcribed from Hebrew into Phoenician. Then H. Lehmann found that the theme of the text had been borrowed from Herodotus. Finally, Professor F. Moore Jr. found a fundamental error in the text, namely the fact that its author mentioned that he was a subject of King Hiram of Sidon. However, Sidon was never ruled by such a king, but Tyre. All this suggested the idea of an archaeological forgery. As a result, Professor Moore Jr. asked the National Museum of Rio de Janeiro to grant him the opportunity to research the stone that bore the inscription in question. Shocking. After months of silence, the Brazilian institution responded that it could not determine the location of the stone, being only in possession of a paper transcription of the Phoenician text made by an unknown person. The investigation carried out by international teams of specialists on site resulted in a firm conclusion. The text was a mystification made by an unknown person. The story of the discovery of America by the Phoenicians was therefore a forgery. But who could produce such a forgery anyway? Suspicion fell on the American semiologist Cyrus Gordon, who was trying to prove the idea of the colonization of America by the Jews immediately after their flight from Palestine. Summoned to account, he brought to light a letter from the Brazilian Dr. Neto, written in 1871, addressed to the director of the Instituto Histórico e Geográfico Brasileiro, in which the text was reproduced. As Neto was a convinced follower of the visit of America by the Phoenicians, but without relying on evidence, no one at his time took his inscription seriously, which, moreover, he was never able to show in the original during his entire life. Unfortunately, neither Gordon nor the reporter from Life magazine knew this story, which stirred up the scientific world for several years, until the truth came to light.